Well, joining me to talk more about all of this is Mehrdad Khonsari, a former Iranian diplomat. Good to have you with us. So we heard President Rouhani there saying Iran will expand its military power, it will pursue its missile work. So does this mean that US sanctions have failed?
No, it doesn't mean that they have failed. But the point is that Iran is in a critical situation. It's trying to fight back or to pretend that it can weather the tremendous amount of pressures that are being, used against it. The sanctions have made things much more difficult for Iran. And President Rouhani's comments, something that he has to say at this time, comes in the aftermath of his own government presenting the Iranian parliament with a bill to remove 4 decimal points from the Iranian currency, 1 for every 10 years. Which shows in simple terms that the US dollar is worth 2,000 times more than what it was 40 years ago. And that depicts the life of the Iranian people. So to think that sanctions, extra pressure is not working is not correct. But the fact is that they are not on the verge of collapse because of the sanctions, and that they are defiant in terms of trying to make it to another day and a better day.
We know their economy has taken a battering. In terms of Iran's foreign policy, though, it has assertively extended its influence beyond its own borders in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Syria. How much is this trying to build its influence in the region a key pillar of its foreign policy?
Well, it is definitely a bargaining chip for Iran in terms of its international standing, in terms of how much it is able to bargain over other issues with the United States, with Europe, with other international partners. The fact is that they have managed to consolidate a position of strength in the region, mainly due to the failures of the United States in terms of being able to stand up or to have a staying power.
But to actively get involved in external conflicts, as it has done in Yemen, for example, what is it trying to achieve there?
Well, in Yemen, which is a different situation to the other areas that you mentioned before, for example, Lebanon, Syria, or Iraq, which are more or less, you might say, adjacent to Iran and have a large Shiite population. In Yemen, the raison d'etre for Iranian involvement is more to try to counterbalance Saudi efforts that are being waged against Iranian interests in other areas, and of course beyond the region in the United States, where the Saudis and the Emiratis are the main protagonists in trying to encourage anti-Iranian sentiment and more economic sanctions against Iran. So Yemen is where the Saudis are caught in a quagmire, and the Iranians are obviously using that opportunity in order to exert their own influence and to bargain against, a better position in other places.
And Iran's relations with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states is really interesting, because President Rouhani said during his election campaign that he would campaign for better relations with neighbors in the Gulf, but there's been very little progress there.
Well, yes, but on this issue, I think that President Rouhani has acted in good faith, in the sense that if you look at the course of the last 40 years, I would say 35 of that 40 years, it was the Iranians who were bothering, or you might say provoking, the Saudis in a wrong way. They were indulging in policies that they should not have, just as they have indulged in anti-Americanism or anti-Israeli positions, which went over and above what is in Iranian national interest. But in the last 5 years, and in particular in the government of President Rouhani, they have opted for a better relations, trying to have dialogue. But it's the Saudis who have held back and whose position has become much more hardened.
Really interesting stuff. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Mehrdad Khonsari there.